Hi, everyone. This is Vinay Raman with the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast. Let me first start by telling you what the podcast is all about. For me, it started as a personal journey and a professional journey. Early on in my career, I started to realize that there were things that I didn't know, and they started to hold me back. As I started to delve into it further and further, as I started to become a leader of companies, as I started to become a leader in the spaces that I lived in or worked in, I started to realize what I couldn't see is what held me back the most. I didn't like that. I didn't want things to hold me back. As a serial entrepreneur, trying to find out what those things were that were holding me back, or what kept me up at night. And those things could be everything from your employees, your employee engagement, your retention. Do they stay? Finding the right employees to stay at your company and how productive they were. But it also led to the scalability of my company, how sustainable the company was, and did I have the right culture? And did my customers love me? These are all the blind spots. There's many, many, many stories around this. And I've suffered through many of them, as I suspect we all have. But what I did find is that the data, the numbers, is where I can start to find some of these blind spots, the things that kind of make you scratch your head a little bit and say, hey, what is actually happening here? Because if you can see the data, you can start to find those blind spots. And that's what we do as a company, is we find those blind spots and we show them to others, show them to companies, that is, so they can figure out where their blind spots are. We call it culture intelligence. We help you find the culture that you have in your company and where that culture is limiting your growth and your ability as a company. So let me tell you a little bit about what's coming up in the coming weeks. My guests will be arriving here very shortly. And as soon as they come on board, we'll kind of switch over to them. But let me tell you about some of the exciting conversations that we've got coming in the coming weeks. On April 8th of 2021, on Business Blind Spots podcast, we've got Lee Lamb. Lee is, hey Edmund, how are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. I'm just telling people some of the events that are coming up here in the next couple weeks, and I'll, uh, I'll be with you in just a second as I let them know. So Lee Lamb on April 8th, better culture comes from understanding your data. She's going to talk to us about the data and how it actually can help you discover what's happening in your culture. On March 30th, John Doan, he is in the business of making business risk more profitable. He's going to come and talk about how you can turn that risk into a profit center as opposed to a cost area. That's on March 30th. On 325, the 25th, Courtney from Pest End is coming in to talk about why culture in a company matters. She and her company have grown, her pest control company have grown really, really quickly in recent years. And she's going to tell us why the culture in her company makes all the difference in the world and why it's gotten them where they are today and why it's going to get them to where they want to go as a company. But today I've got Edmund Mackey from Aptive, and the title of our topic is Delivering on a Company Vision and an Approach. And I will tell you just from the conversation Edmund and I had a little earlier today, I think this should be a really, really fun conversation. Edmund, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be with you, Vinay.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. Now, I want to set some ground rules. Look, this is a live podcast, so uh, I don't get to be the only one, and I'm not the only one who gets to ask questions of Edmund. Uh, so, if you're in watching us live, and I see some people already are, tell us where you're connecting from. I'd love to hear who you are and where you are. And throughout the course of this, if you have questions, something that I say, or you want some greater clarification about what Edmund's saying, jump in, ask us. We'd love to understand what it is you're saying because we all learn by understanding from your perspective. But just before I start with Edmund, I want to tell you a little bit about him. Part of why I have him on the podcast here, and Edmund, I got to tell you, I was going through your bio here as I was talking through it, and I'm trying to say, gosh, how do I distill? I mean, how much you have, how much you've gone through, how much you've done, and all the different areas of expertise that you bring to the table here uh, into something that someone can keep up with. There's a lot here. So it's an impressive background. I'll start off by saying senior executive at Aptive, pest control at this point, Aptive Environmental, sorry. Touched digital strategy. You've had success spanning telecommunications, home service, health and fitness. You've built commercial infrastructures from the ground up. And what I love about this, just this breadth of responsibilities and roles: branding, demand generation, sales process and development, segmentation, customer acquisition, social media marketing, direct consumer marketing, B2B sales. I mean, the word that I'm hearing throughout the courses is just this idea of empathy. I mean, you've kind of understood many, many dimensions of people. And I want to just tell them a couple more things here about you, Edmund, because there is a lot. But DirecTV, Apex Fitness Group, California Fitness, you led the financial planning and digital marketing strategy at Service Master, which is a $2.8 billion company. So some significant visibility into how an organization runs. Senior Director of Marketing at DirecTV, but Board of Directors at Make-A-Wish Foundation, Cooper Young Housing Development Organization. You've got a long story here and a lot of accomplishments, part of why I wanted to have you on today. So first of all, thanks for joining today. I'm really looking forward to getting into this conversation.
Yeah, so am I. Thanks for the very good introduction and welcome. I appreciate it.
Well, so you and I were talking a little bit earlier today, and the topic of our podcast today is this idea of delivering on a vision. Tell me a little bit about Edmund Mackey in terms of what's not on the bio, right? The reading between the lines. I mean, reading between the lines. What's the real story? Tell me a little about the journey of Edmund Mackey to where you're running really large companies and defining the strategy and vision for them.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I still feel like I'm on the journey. I'm not at a destination. And so I think, how I would sum up everything that you so eloquently, read off about my bio is that my specialty is I would really have two specialties. One is understanding how to grow a company. You can include in that, running more efficiently.
Okay.
The second is growing and leading people. My personal mission, vision, you want to call it, some people say a calling, that I've refined over my sort of career is Edmund exists to grow and inspire leaders who love and serve people. Grow and inspire are deliberate, and so is love and serve people. Um, it's not to it deliberately doesn't just say inspire people. It deliberately doesn't just say grow people. Um, it doesn't say cater to and inspire people. So it's to grow. And one of the things that I've sort of staked my career on is that I want to leave people and places better than what I found them. That if you've, you know, been on my team as a peer or as a direct report or as somebody who was maybe even, a couple of levels removed, that you feel as though I added something good to your career and path. That that too many early in my career, I saw examples of bosses, let's say, that didn't invest in people. They didn't try to align company interest with the skill sets and the passions of people that were working for the organization. And I just always have thought that that was a miss. That at the end of the day, the business or that division or that business unit is only going to be as good as the people that's in it and the leader that's over it. Period. I don't care what the strategy is. Peter Drucker, who's a management father of
Guru.
modern
Yeah.
guru. I consider myself a Peter Drucker follower, disciple, if you will. And he's got the famous quote of culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Right.
And that for me means, without the benefit of having Peter Drucker transcribe what his thoughts were when he wrote it or when he said it, is that who's doing the work is more important than what or how they're approaching the work. At the end of the day, the success or lack of success is going to be due to the culture, the people that are doing it, over what they're actually, how fine or how astute or how smart or how analytical the strategy might be, right? And so that's something I've staked my career on over and over, is understanding what those levers are in the company are, and they're different for every company. And then understanding, or linking, I should say, people to those outcomes.
So something that came up as I'm hearing you say this stuff is you've got this charge, right? You've got this, I'll call it the Edmund Mackey mandate, right? It's this belief that you have that you're supposed to do that. Who gave you that right? Who told you that? How did you come to that point where you said, this is what I'm supposed to do? How did you get there?
Oh man, it's funny you asked me that, Vinay. So I actually, I'll just back up a little bit. I'm currently the chief operating officer here at Aptive. This is a new role for me. I've never directly been over a field organization, even though I've been over the strategy of what the field organization does and things like that. Never directly led a field organization. So this is new for me. And this week, I've got regional managers from all over the country in, and I've just come out of a session with them about who I am, what my belief statements are as a leader, what my, as you call it, charge or calling is. And we took as part of this, we took a predictive index, which is a tool that companies use to diagnose personality traits, culture fits of their organization. It's the first time I've taken one.
Mhm.
And mine was the Maverick. And the Maverick is an innovative, outside of the box thinker who is undaunted by failure. These are the people that lead organizational change. It goes on and gives you this summary of who you are. And I can't find a word in here that I disagree with. So I think that this has come from, for me, is something I've had since I was a little boy. So my mom and dad separated when I was 8 years old. And my mom calls me the oldest of her second set. So I've got five brothers.
Okay.
And the older two are, 12, there's 12 years between me and my next oldest brother. My parents are from the Caribbean, so I'm a first generation American. Their ideals of what America was and what it is were rooted in that. But when my mom and dad separated, I went from being, hey, dad was the provider, mom was kind of like a stay-at-home mom, to mom going back to school and having to learn how to provide for us. And that means that she left the responsibility, a lot of the kind of day-to-day decision making that a parent would have, with me, with my younger brother. So that means things like something as innocuous as uh, taking the bus from school. My parents didn't show up to say, hey, jump in the minivan and get in. No, we had to walk several blocks and take the city bus, home. And you got to learn where your change is. You got to learn where the transfers are. You got to learn the bus line. You got to learn what time it comes. You have to learn all of these things. And so for me, I think it's something that's always been with me, that I've never experienced certainty in a way that allows for complacency. And I think that's what most people have in their careers, or and companies have in their stages, is that companies, I think a lot of times just get less ambitious. They get more fixed into what they are as opposed to what they can deliver. And I think a great example of that is company's vision and company strategy, where leaders, CEOs, founders, they lull themselves into sleep by saying, "Oh, I just want to be 10% better. Let's take this goal of sales and say, oh, let's just get 10% better, or let's get 5% better. Let's take the cost and let's make that 5 or 10% better. And oh, I'm running a better company if I do those things than if I don't." And the reality is, you and I are both business people, entrepreneurs. We've worked for large organizations. There's not that much difference between a 20% profitable company and a 19% profitable company. I mean, give me a break. It's really no difference. But we lull ourselves into sleep as leaders thinking, oh, I just want to get a little bit better here and a little bit better there, and continuous improvement, right? As long as I'm continually getting better, then my company or my organization is running better. And the reality of it is it's not. There's not that much difference. You're not going to do anything radically different from year to year if all you're thinking about is getting incrementally better, right? So for me, I see it as a mandate because it is a responsibility that you should have high expectations of what you can accomplish. And that's something my mom instilled in me. I think that's something that most parents instill in their children, but somewhere along the way, it gets washed out by life, where you at one point in your life believed you can be anything, and you get to be 35 and you're like, oh no, I'm an accountant. And so, and whatever that thing ends up being. And same thing with companies. You start out as a founder-led business, or you start out as this entrepreneurial launch, and you've got all the ambitions in the world. And then you get 10 years in, and like, oh, well, I'm a 20% profitability company. And you begin to start defining yourself by these new parameters that did not exist when you were starting. And if you're really real with yourself, it's just really now you don't have the same ambition as you did. You're more susceptible to thinking about failures or the risk side versus the benefit side.
No truer words have been spoken. I talked to my I've got 3 kids. My youngest is 7. And I asked him, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" He said, "Dad, I think I'm going to be a fireman," but he's not finished yet.
Yeah.
I'm going to be an astronaut. Okay, and a pediatrician. All
Yeah.
right. And I'm also going to be a policeman. I was like, and this is all going to be in one day? He's like, yeah, Dad. And I'm thinking about, I was like, well, what happened to that? Right? You aren't, there's no numbers there, right? There's no definition of 10%, right? It's just completely passion based.
Exactly.
Right? And that's the part that, he goes off and plays. Well, he'll go sit and play with his cars and, dreaming up these magical worlds. I think I did. I think everybody does, right? And that's where you're going to be. And it's almost as though the system beats it out of you by the time you get to 35, where you say, I'm just an accountant.
Yeah,
And you are.
I have a saying on those lines. The system is designed to spit out a generic version of a person.
Hmm.
Every system, every institution, companies included, is designed to spit out the generic version of a person, right? The whole notion and theory around standardization is that you don't want exceptions on either side. You don't want great exceptions and you don't want bad exceptions. They're both equally, right? they're both equally errors, right? So if we're making widgets, the system is designed to create the same widget over and over and over. It's not designed to create an incrementally better widget, or it's not designed to give an example of a great widget one time and a what may be considered a bad widget another time, right? So systems are designed to spit out the generic version of a person. And it's, that's something that I've kind of come to realize over the last probably 10 years. And I purposefully try to be different. I purposefully try to find places where I can push the envelope. I purposely try to find rules that I can break, or rules that are just arbitrary. By definition, most rules are arbitrary, but you understand what I'm saying? Even in business.
So, Business Blind Spots Expose is the name of the podcast, right? We're talking about a vision here. And I feel like this is shaping up perfectly already in terms of the way the dialogue is going here. Because so many people, a lot of the people who'll be listening in, who listen to the podcast are listening here because they're trying to punch through some self-limiting belief of their own. They're trying to get to the next layer.
Yeah.
I've gotten to now 25 employees. I've gotten 500. I've gotten 100. Whatever that number is. I want to go further, but gosh, it's comfortable where I am right now. Do I really? Because I just want to do 10 more percent. But you're working your tail off and you're not enjoying it. You're kind of a slave to work as opposed to work being a slave to you, kind of thing, the way it's supposed to be. Talk to me about this idea of the vision and laying into that vision. What steps do you take to kind of keep yourself true to that? And let me put one last point in there before I because I want to hear from you here. And that is, someone told me once, tell me what your vision is, Vinay, in 5 years. And I told them, and they said, now, does that make you get knots in your stomach and your gut? Does it make you uncomfortable? Do you feel like, I don't know how the hell I'm going to do that? I said, no. Then he said, it's not big enough then.
Yeah.
It's got to
That
push you beyond what you can do today.
that's very, very hilarious to me, because that was the first thing that I was going to say, is that most visions, I don't call visions because they're not bold enough. That's usually the first flag, if you want to call it that, that is not a real vision, that it's an objective or an initiative. It's not a vision because it's usually not bold enough.
Yeah.
And people make the biggest mistake I see when people create visions is that they try to make it something they can prove or disprove. And by doing that,
Hmm.
they only operate in the world that they exist in. Meaning, oh, how do I make it quantifiable? Like, how can a vision be quantifiable? how can the impossible be quantified over time? Right? How would you know you achieve that? You won't know until you've gotten there, or something that you are continually striving to be. And so most visions that I've seen from companies, or personal visions that people create for themselves, are self-limiting. They're governors. They're um, bumper sticker statements. They are meaningless. And the question you have to ask yourself, especially if you're a business owner, is why would someone else sign up for that vision? If you've got a vision to be a $1 billion company, like, okay, great. Understand what's in it for you if you achieve that. What's in it for people who work for you if they achieve that? Like that by definition, but you see visions like that. You see, hey, our vision is to be a $1 billion company, or our vision is to um, be the most profitable company in the North America, or whatever these kind of bumper sticker terms people use to quantify whether they're the best or not the best at something. And I think a vision should resonate not only with you as a company owner, or a high level executive. It should resonate with the people that enable you to achieve the vision, your team members, your employees, your associates, whatever you call them, and your customers. It should be something that it's not one dimensional, and it should resonate with all of those audiences. And it should be something that is higher than just a quantifiable number. That's
So
my
Yeah, I like that, I like you to kind of distill that for me. So the title of the podcast, this particular episode, is this idea is talking about the vision and approach to building that vision. Let's distill that into a blind spot for me. What is it that people are potentially not doing that keeps them from building that vision the right way? Play that back to me, or what? How would you say that another way?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think self-doubt is probably the biggest one. They don't believe that they can achieve something because as humans, we, especially as business people, we believe ourselves to be logical and rational. And so, hey, how can I have this vision about myself or about my company that's not quote unquote believable? And who determines whether something is believable or not? Mirror, meet Edmund, right? I determine something whether something is achievable for me or not the world, right? And so I think self doubt is probably the biggest. The second one that I see with companies is that they try to appease every audience. And so it's not distinct enough. It's not meant to be something that draws people to it or that people avoid. And I think that that's also the sign of a good vision because there's going to be some visions that people are drawn to. Those are the people you want. Meaning, oh, now you're attracting the people that have chosen you. That's where you want to be, right? From a customer perspective, employee perspective, etc. Like people should love or hate it. It's not something that should just be agreeable to everybody.
So
So
I'm going to repeat these back to you, kind of just maybe paraphrasing a little bit of what you're saying, right? So self doubt is a hallmark or a flag that you're limiting your vision. If you're self doubting yourself up front, your vision is not as big as it can be, and this is part of that. You got that knot in your gut. Well, if you've got that knot in your gut, then you're probably starting to push yourself, and self doubt has to step out of the way for that. That's
exactly,
one thing I heard from you. Number two is appeasing all doesn't work because you're trying to attract. The vision is the magnet, right? That is the gravity. And if you create the vision large enough, the gravity will attract the way it needs to, not because you ask it to. How's that?
exactly. No, that's exactly right. And the I give you one more. What I see often is that people don't revisit it. They think it's a set it and forget it. It has to be perfect. It's not a living thing. Where I believe that a vision should be revisited because your perception of what you can achieve will change, right? As 5 years from now, your vision about what this podcast is today, what you believe is possible, right? Today won't be the case in 5 years. So you should revisit, you should revisit that document, those words and see if they still resonate with you.
That's interesting you say that. So, what came to mind was I was thinking about Adam Grant in Originals, and he talks about some of the characteristic behaviors of the originals. And one of the things he said is there's the people, is the what he called the procrastinators, the people who are like, I got to get this stuff done. They're in the do mode all the time. They're just checking boxes. He said, and what you find is that those procrastinators don't have much creativity because they're getting stuff done. They're not taking time to sit. Then you've got the other end of the spectrum, which is the procrastinators, which are just waiting, waiting, waiting. He said, then you find the people that are the originals that are right in the middle of that curve where they're waiting for the right feeling to manifest itself.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King, a bunch of others. He said Martin Luther King had rewritten his speech many, many times. His famous "I Have a Dream" speech. He was up till 3 o'clock in the morning writing it, and then he got up on stage, and those four words came out, and it wasn't scripted.
Yeah.
so,
Exactly. No, it's
so
exactly
you're
right.
constantly revisiting it. Is the idea there?
Exactly. I think that, you know, it's okay for us to have new ambitions of ourselves and of our expectations. And it's also that document is part of the papers of your company. right? It's kind of in your value prop. You wouldn't run a company for 10 years and not ever look at your offering to see if it still resonates with customers. Right? That's just not so. So I believe the same thing about a vision, because at the end of the day, the vision kind of determines what the value proposition of your company is.
So I'm gonna switch gears slightly because here's something that's come up for me recently in recent couple of years, and I love your thoughts on this. And I'll kind of propose this as my own blind spot, as a blind spot that I'm kind of positing here, and that is that I think a lot of people believe that they've got to sell somebody on the vision, when in fact what I've said, I'm not selling anybody, and I come from a place of abundance. There's so much for me to do. I could, if I live for the next 200 years, there's plenty of work for me to do.
Yeah,
So I'm not worried about that. And so I'm not selling anybody on my vision. They're more than welcome to do what they want, but I will invite you in to being part of mine if you'd be so inclined. If you
right.
start to invite people in, they get to opt in. They get to build equity in it. They get to say, I want, and that's part of my passion. What do you think of that?
No, I love that. I would, in my head, what you just said is resonate. And so it's either going to resonate with you or it's not.
Yeah.
If I have to convince you, then it doesn't resonate. And convincing is another word for
Yeah.
selling. And so if it doesn't immediately resonate, then maybe it's not a good fit. I think that's a great litmus test.
Yeah. So I don't not or just revisit your vision, right? Because you're going to continue to iterate. And I'll tell you from a personal point of view, when I started this company, Carmo, I had an idea if we were going to have 50,000 people using the system at one point in time. And then recently it was 2 million on a
Yeah,
monthly basis. And I've upped that again to 10 million.
yeah,
And the more and more I think about it in terms of the size and grandeur of what we can do as a company, I was like, maybe why am I limiting it? And sure, does it scare the bejesus out of me that that's a large number? Yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to get there, but you damn
yeah,
skippy if I'm not.
exactly.
But that's it, right? I mean, that's that. I think that's what I'm hearing from you is lean into it, lean into it.
Lean into it. And I would say what I would challenge you with is make it bigger than the number.
Yeah.
So, as an example, what you just said, amount of monthly users. When I think of your company, I think that what you really do is enable cultures.
Hmm.
You allow, as an executive, I can validate whether or not my employees or their team members are exhibiting the kind of behaviors that our culture wants. And I don't see a limit of users on that. I don't see a company that would not be interested in that, right? And so for me, when I look at your guys' company after our first meeting, I thought, wow, this is like a non-invasive way to inspect the behaviors that we expect our employees are doing when they're away from the nest, so to speak, right? When they're in the vehicle going out and about their day, I don't have a body cam on them, nor do I want to put one on them. How do we inspect what we expect, the behaviors anyway that we expect? This is a window into that. Um, this is live data that either verifies or tells us where there's opportunities of where we are missing the mark, and how getting our head around how to actually shape those behaviors in a way that we want them to be shaped.
Yeah.
And how we handle those things are up to us as a company and our culture, right? Whether it's a stick or a carrot or a little bit in between or however we want to do those things. But without your company, I don't think we would have a good solid way to actually verify that those behaviors are being exhibited or not.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and what's really interesting here is that so I have a mentor And the mentor kind of challenged me on the same thing. He said, why are you putting a number on that, Vinay? It's much bigger than that. So
Yeah.
I talked to my mentor. I could have come and talked to you. The same thing is basically what I'm hearing here.
Well, by definition, putting a number on it makes it self-limiting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's
Unless
right.
the number is infinity.
Yeah, I mean, his point to me is, so Vinay, if you get to 5 million, is that a failure? And I was
Yeah,
like, I don't think so. He said, well, then why do you have the number on it?
exactly.
So
Exactly.
let's talk about all these companies that are trying to get to bigger and better. Some of the consistent messages that I'm trying to put out there on LinkedIn is invest in your people. We're all in the people business. That's end of story, right? Because dogs, cats, and robots still don't buy anything for themselves yet. So it's all people, and value is created for people. In creating that vision, how do you tie that to the numbers, right? Because you work for all these various companies, ServiceMaster, DirecTV, so forth. As you work for these companies, what is that? What is that integration between the two? How have you thought of that? You got the numbers and the hard facts, but then you got the vision.
Oh, I love that question. This is a question that I think is probably one of the most valuable questions in business, and that people don't ask it enough. And so I can tell you my process
Mm-hmm.
and how I think about it. So here at Aptive, we've actually refined our vision here last year, and our vision is that every home should be enjoyed.
Hmm.
Now, we're a pest control company, and there's no
Number.
number of customers, there's no largest this or whatever that. It is that we believe that every home should be enjoyed. So, what does that mean? That if we're providing services for a home, that pests are one of the reasons that people are not allowed to enjoy their home. They don't go on the patio because of, oh, in August mosquitoes are deadly, or come dawn mosquitoes come out, or I don't go into the garage because there's so many spiders and I'm afraid to, go in that part of the house because of whatever the fear is. And so by eliminating that, you allow people to enjoy their homes. What kind of value can you put on that, as far as being able to enjoy your home more as a homeowner? And so getting down to the numbers, I'm actually, after we speak today, I'm going into an incentives meeting where we will be discussing how are we going to incentivize our service professionals who do visit a home around that vision.
Hmm.
In my experience and my personal process and point of view on this is that your people are not motivated by the same things that you are as an executive. And so you have to think about little things as like stops on a route. We kind of think of these things as executives as a sign of productivity. But by calling a stop, you're not calling it Mrs. Jones. You're not calling it the Harrell family, right? And a stop on that Surface Pros route is a home. Someone lives in that home. Someone's depending on you to deliver service at a high level so that their day and their experiences in their home are not disrupted. So how do you call that a stop? Oh, I'm on my fifth stop for the day. No, you're on your fifth visit today, and that visit is the Wilson home on 123 Main Street. And we're going to judge whether or not you're visiting that home and providing a level of service to that home by, did the Wilsons call in and complain about you not doing the backyard and they want you to come back out to do the backyard, or they found spider webs on their patio when that's something that we should have taken care of? Were you out of chemical, or did you not have a certain piece of equipment on your truck because you didn't do inventory before you left the office to make sure you had enough to complete all of your visits today? So little language like visits as opposed to stops. Customers to know, we refer to our customers by name. We don't just say customers. We say, if you're visiting 10 families, 10 different homes today, those are 10 families. Those are not arbitrary customers, right? This is your route today. And these people are depending on you to deliver something at a high level. So connecting the hearts and minds of employees to the actual mission of the company is your answer. Now, I know that sounds too literal to be an answer, but that is the answer. The answer is, if you just take the time and breathe and say to yourself what your vision is, enjoy home enjoyment. What does that mean? My part in that home enjoyment experience is making sure that there's a pest free environment. How do I ensure that I do that? Right. And I can't do it if I say, oh, I've got 16 stops today. It's a long day. Or, hey, I've got to be on time, or I've got to do this much services per hour, or whatever other things that we put in employees' heads that's important. And they're not at all important. If it has nothing to do with helping a customer enjoy their home, how does the amount of stops on a route, or the amount of services per hour, their productivity, or the amount of miles that they drove to reach this destination, how is any of that important into what that customer perceives as you providing a great service or not? These are things that we make up as business people to make ourselves feel good about, oh, I'm being P&L responsible, or I'm being efficient. And there is a definition for productivity, and having a master's degree in finance, I know how to measure productivity, but not everyone in business knows how to measure productivity, right? What you might say is efficient, I might say is actually a value destroying thing to do. So actually, you're making the customer less, or the company less productive by doing that thing, even though on its face it seems as if you're being more efficient, right? And I think services per hour, you and I have discussed things like revenue per hour, revenue per mile. I think of those things sometimes taken the wrong way, or taken too literally, can actually destroy value for a company. Because one example I will use is this whole notion of reservices, or rework, or I've heard them referred to as callbacks from other pest control companies and service companies. And we think of that as waste. We think of that as something we want to eliminate. But think about what you're actually called to do. The customer cares enough to call you to revisit their home because they were unsatisfied about a level of service, or they had an expectation of your service that you did not do. We look at that as waste. We try to eliminate those. We try to draw those out. We try to make people wait 3 days, or we tell people things like, "Well, give the chemical time to work," and these kinds of things we tell. And it's like, wow, a customer cared enough to call you to come out and revisit their home, and the best thing you can come out up with was trying to prolong that. Why? Oh, well, that revenue, my revenue per mile might be impacted by that decision. And it's like, well, yeah, your revenue per mile can be permanently impacted by that position if you lose a customer, right? And so why would you let that factor into how you would treat a customer? as an example. But on the face, it seems like, oh, we're being more efficient, we're being more productive, we're being more effective, right? My route is more revenue producing, but you miss the big picture in that equation.
So I've got to apologize. I feel like I've been fidgeting my seat here because you're saying these things. I'm like, "Oh, I got to say this. I got to say this. I got to say this." I,
And
I,
it's natural. I'm sure the audience, there's probably some people doing the same thing.
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, gosh, I need to bring you on as the podcast host here. Anyone, please, I would love to hear your comments and thoughts on this. I've gotten so wrapped up, and 45 minutes in, I haven't even asked anyone to jump in. I think I'm getting too much out of this. Um, I think I'm going to start first with with a lot of what you just said there. So I've always had this saying that is, I can pay for people's minds, but if I get their hearts, I win. And bringing this all back together, right? If the blind spot is, if your people don't understand what's the vision and how and what part they play in that vision, they don't know how to support the vision, and therefore they will be disengaged. And there's 10,000 stats that you can read about. A disengaged employee is effectively a useless employee.
Exactly.
Um,
A value destroying employee.
what's that?
A value destroying employee.
Yeah.
So I say that disengaged employees is not a zero sum game. They're actually destroying value in your company. You know what I mean? It's not that you get no value. They're
Yep.
actually taking away value.
The way my which is a great point, right? I mean, it's a cancer. That's, I mean, it's the left wheel going left and the right wheel going right. Is that wheel actually just slowing you down? It's actually causing you harm at that
Exactly.
point.
Exactly.
The way my one friend of mine puts it is that for every $100,000 that you spend, if employee disengagement, and this is the number I've heard, 74% of employees are disengaged. He said for every $100,000 you spend, $74,000 has gone down the toilet before you even spent it. But I think your point is actually, I think there's a whole nother side to that. That's more than $74,000 you
More than
lost.
30,000.
Yeah, because someone else could be in that role doing something of value and multiplying, amplifying what the company does.
Exactly. And the things that that employee is doing is actually doing more harm than good.
Yeah. So another thing that I've heard many times is use core values as your measuring stick, and I think as a part and parcel to creating a good vision, I think a lot of companies have core values. Whether they actually activate into those core values and whether they actually show employees what those behaviors are that they expect to act along those core values and that vision is how you get employees to say, oh, this is how I'm supposed to behave. And, this is part of what we're trying to do as a company, is trying to help people find the data that supports, yeah, this person is on target with living to the core values. How do core values relate to the vision, the way you all think about it?
That, I mean, you're asking some great questions. Now I'm going to give you an unconventional answer, and I will disclose and disclaim this answer by saying this is Edmund's observations.
Okay.
These are Edmund's points of view. Uh, these are not the point of view of you as the podcast host or anyone else,
So
but
I'll put a
my
big flashing yellow banner when I put this out.
but
Okay.
my own. And I will say that in my observations and my personal point of view is that the exercise of core values are largely a bumper sticker exercise that executives do to make themselves feel good about having a company.
All right.
I believe that in most companies, and how I've seen it in most companies, they are just words on a wall. They are just words on the coffee mug that they were derived from looking at other companies' core values and slapping them on, or some other haphazard process. They were very well thought out. They just seemed like um, good things to add. And my litmus test for that, and you guys can test it, so maybe I can create a discipleship here or following, is my litmus test for core values is What if you're not that? So, you see a lot of things like honesty, ethical, hardworking. It's like, well, what if you're not that? I mean, like, why would you hire somebody who wasn't hardworking or honest? I mean, is that a core value? Is that something that makes the people that you're looking for different than anybody else who would be an employable person? And that, so I don't mean to sort of take you in a direction you don't want to go there, but for me, I believe that ignore the core values if it's a company you're trying to join, or if it's a company that you are in, or if it's a company that you lead. Show me your incentive plan, and I will show you and tell you what your core values are, the real ones. And
uh,
they by and large do not match up with what's on the bumper sticker.
so this is interesting because I talk to a lot of owners of businesses and I tell them, so what is the most important thing in your company? And they say, my people. And I said, and at the end of every month, you have a spreadsheet that has the names of all of your people at the end of it, right? And that's how you measure your success. No, I look at how much revenue I made that month. So
Just
I said,
sounds good.
that's right. I think what you're saying is, all right, I'm calling BS on that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
As opposed to what? My trucks or my leases being my most important asset, right?
So this is interesting. Um, Gosh, we should have just jumped directly to this. Because I think I'm getting for something. So one of the things that I have done for myself, or I should say for my company, is we have 5 core values. Number one is connection. You got to make a connection with someone. It has nothing to do with the business, right? Do you have something that you know about the individual? You and I, traction book. We'll always have traction.
Yeah, exactly.
Next is this idea of wonder, coming in without truly seeking to understand, not coming in with some preconceived notions, leading to audacity. To me, the word audacity means this is just an idea, right? We've got a level of trust, and I say, so, hey, you and I have been talking for some time. We need to meet at a bar sometime over a nice, or in front of a fire pit one day.
We definitely need to have this conversation around a fire.
Yeah, that's right. With a really nice scotch, right? Or whatever, right? Leading to authenticity and then to joint prosperity. And the reason I tell you that is because for each one of them, I've got 3-4 questions that I say, are you actually leaning into this? Because I'm trying to craft them as a behavior that you go through and look in sales process, in marketing process, uh, you know, operations, customer support, finance. They are guideposts for how you think. I think what I'm hearing from you is that's all great, but if you've got a vision, and so I'm kind of thinking out loud here as I'm kind of processing what you're telling me. If you've got a vision, if everybody is on board and gets what the vision is, those things should naturally play themselves out anyway. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's for me the biggest piece. The second piece I would do to challenge what your thinking is, and not to say that you didn't put a lot of thought into those core values, is that how are you rewarding it and how are you
Mhm.
exhibiting it, and and also how are you reinforcing that every day, because that becomes what your core values are, not what you have written down. And so, as an example, if you say be audacious, but in meetings, if you shoot down everyone's ideas,
Are you being
or
audacious?
give them reasons why oh, now is not the right time to do that, or right, or if you're not, um, or if you're monitoring things like their meeting times, or if someone you're saying be audacious, and if someone scheduled an hour a day to think about audacious ideas, and you came by and said, "Hey, I've noticed that 3 o'clock every day you've got calendar booked, and I'd like to put a meeting on the calendar for Wednesday at 3." And they're like, "Oh, that's my time to think about big ideas." And you go, "Yeah, but this meeting is more important than that." And so, can you make you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That
I need you to do TPS reports at 3 p.m.
exactly, exactly, because then those are the real values of your company. So it's not what you put all that thought into uh, trying to exhibit, right? Your core values are the things that you are reinforcing both intentionally and unintentionally every day. And if you've got your vision right, the things that you should be reinforcing and enforcing every day, you shouldn't have to put on a bumper sticker or put on a mug. Or I'm going to pick fun of our company right now and just say, mine is on this nice little hydration bottle.
Yeah.
But these are great, very well thought out, but they don't mean anything if we're not enforcing it every day. What becomes what we reinforce every day is the actual core values of the company.
Well, shit, Edmund, I thought I'd figured it all out. Damn it! Now I got to start all over again. I'm telling you, this is why this podcast is here. I am every person that I have on here. I always walk around going, "Huh, I need to scratch my head a little bit here on that." That was not something. That's not a perspective I had before. But look, we're coming up to the tail end of our time. I think there's a couple of things, just to wrap up a little bit of what I heard, summarize. I think this idea of self. First of all, you got to have a vision, right? And that vision's got to create that knot in your stomach. I think is the punchline to that one. If there's self doubt in what you think your vision is, you're automatically limiting it, right? I can get to 10 million. Why the hell would you limit it? Is kind of the question. If you're trying to appease all, then you're trying to unnaturally create an attraction to it. You should not be going out there trying to create that attraction. It should be the magnet and the gravity by itself. And you got to keep revisiting it, right? You got to come back and reattack it and putting more, what I call putting more polish on the stone, right? Come back and put another layer of polish, and eventually it becomes right. But over time, did I miss anything there?
No, I think you captured it all perfectly. And I think with this whole thing of revisiting, the other point that I will make there is something that Jeff Bezos said. I'll give him credit for it, around most business empires that are around today won't be around in 50 or 60 years. Like when I was a kid, Sears and Roebuck was it. I mean, if mom told you were going to Sears and Roebuck, like you were like, oh wow. Now, my daughter, she's 10, she doesn't even know what Sears is. I mean,
Right.
so the importance of revisiting the important point that I'm trying to make there is whatever Sears wrote in their mission and vision 100 years ago when they were created obviously was inadequate for a changing environment. And so you need to revisit it often.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Edmund, I walk away from this with more homework than I thought I would have. So thank you for that.
One thing you were right about, that hour went by really, really quickly.
It does go fast when you kind of get into stuff that really is interesting.
Yeah.
It really does. Thank you for the time. I appreciate you spending an hour with me.
Hey, I've enjoyed every second of it, my friend. Glad to be with
Thanks
you.
much. We'll be talking again shortly.